Hello, and welcome to Mindfulness Voyage. My name is Ted Meissner. Glad you could be with us today. And as usual, if you would please take a moment and be sure to use this lovely link to like and subscribe to this podcast if you're getting something out of it. And as a companion to last week's episode about mindfulness in South America, today we will be learning about bringing mindfulness to children in Argentina. So come on, let's learn. Our guest today is Marina Lisenberg. Marina, welcome to the podcast. Good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Ted. I'm really happy to be here with you.
I'm so glad that we could have this conversation. You are one of the folks that I got to meet at a retreat with John Kabat-Zinn and hundreds of people from all over the world. And I really wanted to hear more about your work, bringing mindfulness to children in Argentina, your books along those lines. But first, I'm wondering if you could just say very briefly, who are you and what do you do in Argentina? A little bit about yourself.
I live in Argentina with my husband. I have three children. I have studied psychology. I am also a certified coach and family therapist. And I have been practicing many kinds of meditation and body-mind techniques since I was maybe 18 years old when I finished school. So I have been, and then I trained at the Center for Mindfulness in the early 2000 when this century started. I
Now,
practice with parents, health professionals, teachers. I have also been developing many programs for universities and schools and nonprofits and corporates. So when I started with mindfulness was not developed in South America, and all the fields were open for interventions. And I started to teach more professionals, and we are having nowadays a beautiful, beautiful landscape of mindfulness interventions in many domains.
Yeah, thank you for that overview. And I'm wondering if you're willing to share, you told me a story before we started recording about just the what you needed to do to learn mindfulness at the Center for Mindfulness. I wonder if you could share that with the viewers.
Of course, I was a practitioner at a public hospital. I was in my early 30s, not in my 20s. And um, I realized reading papers because I needed to be updated. Democracy was arriving to Argentina, and we were able to learn for all over the world new approaches. And mindfulness came to me with Candice Pert, John Kabat-Zinn, all the psico-neuro-endocrine immunología, the integration of medicine approaches. And I realized the Center for Mindfulness was there in Worcester. And I realized that that was exactly what it would be my best way of unfolding my career. So right there, I had to, as you may know, we had in the 90s, last century, we had to go to some retreats of 10 days, silent retreats, Vipassana retreats, have those VHS big cassettes recording with group sessions. We had a master degree, letters of recommendation, and speak English. My English was not good enough, and for 2 years, as I told you, I went every Thursday and Tuesday, 1 hour and a half to go and walk around the park to practice and learn English with a native English speaker, to be able to learn in English at the Center for Mindfulness. the teacher development intensive at that moment. After the retreats and all the professional trainings, we had to stay there for, I guess, 3 weeks, if I remember, okay, or 4 weeks. And well, that's it. It has been a long way. And I hope now my English is as good as my mindfulness practice to offer to our community. I want to tell you one story that, as my books are about raising children as parents, as present as we can be, but embracing our imperfection, our vulnerability, and being moment to moment there to learn and to be able to realize what the moment is asking for. In the early 2003, I think, '04, I had to certify as a teacher, as a mindfulness teacher, and we had 3 senior teachers evaluating us, and they told you what practice you have to unfold, and I had to invite the participants to a body scan. So I started the body scan as usual, from the feet, going up, being as detailed as I could. And then I arrived to those organs that I couldn't remember the name in English. And I didn't know what to do, not to lose presence. And I was like in a loop. And I started to say, 60 people lying down on the floor. I arrived to say, well, now we pay attention, we take all our attention to the organs that filter the liquids, and all the 60 started to laugh. We laughed in a way that we couldn't stop it for some minutes. Those kidneys that I will remember all of my life. And from that storm of laughing, we continue the body scan. And that was a very important lesson for me that I would like to share. The most important was to be there as I could, with all my resources, and trusting the possibility that we have also as a community to go on. But it was so funny about these things that we were talking about, learning in English to be home. It's not my native mother's tongue. So that kind of translation is very interesting also.
That is a beautiful story in so many ways. And first, as I've mentioned to you, I've tried 4 different times to learn different languages, and my brain doesn't work that way. I don't, memorizing words is a really difficult thing, so it's really been difficult. So I'm always impressed by people who have picked up, let alone English, which is a very complicated language. But your story was beautiful in that it brought in these important aspects of being present, and lightness and laughter and joy can be part of the practice too. That so often it can be heavy and very restrictive. So thank you so much for sharing that one. And if we can segue, I want to hear more about what brought you into being interested in working with children in mindfulness. How did that get started?
Oh, that's a very good question, Ted. While I was at the hospital, I was recently married and I had my first kid. I realized that being a mother was struggling moment to moment, and I was not really prepared. I was not raised in a family where I could be able to regulate my emotions and be able and be allowed to feel negative stuff. And being a mother was like so challenging for me. At the same moment that I started to raise children, I started mindfulness. When I was in Worcester, in a break time, walking around the hotel, I realized that the most important thing for me was to practice in that domain. And I was so lucky that John Kabat-Zinn, my teacher, was so close that and in that moment he was reading a book that he wrote with Myla, his wife, about raising children, everyday blessings. And we had a very, very profound conversation about that retreat of 18 years that is raising kids. And he told me, Marina, that's the most valuable, important practice of life, how you're going to be present with the most significant others that are in your life. Just jump into it, go there. I felt that support, and when I arrived to Argentina, I started to work with the community in these domains that I am telling you, and everybody was asking me, Marina, what do you do with your children at home? I was dealing with such a stuff that I couldn't. For example, I had a 9-year-old who was crying because the day after she would have a math test, and she was feeling that she was not able to do it okay, to pass the exam. So Mrs. Mindfulness, automatic pilot, says to my daughter, okay, dear, why don't we lie down and breathe? Imagine you blow a balloon, blah, 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 whatever you can imagine. And she got completely angry. And she was like, Mommy, I am asking you for help. Please shut up and embrace me. There I learned many things that are in my books that I want to go there. First, practicing mindfulness is not about recipes. It's about being really present, what is unfolding in the moment. And if you skip that, you are losing the possibility of connecting. The other one is my daughter had been raised to pay attention to what she needed. And she had been allowed also to ask me, Mommy, that it's not that, please embrace me. And at the moment I was able to hear her, I shut up, embraced her in silence with all my heart. And she said, thank you so much. Now I can go to sleep. So having all of these kind of experiences, and I was teaching MBSR to everybody 20 years ago, I started to create ways to go to the children at home, at the club, at the school, ways that in Argentina, especially, and in all South America, are very well known in our culture, which in, I don't know this translation, is a payada. Payada is a way that you recite something that plays with the words so you can remember. And I started to teach that kind of stuff to parents. What happened? In one of my group sessions, there was a person who was working at the editor's industry in Penguin Random House. I didn't know that at all. And this person said to me, Marina, this is going to be a book. This has to be published. That is how I started to offer material to the world thanks to this person, and I put all the payadas into one book with practices, and that book is called El Secreto de Emilia. El Secreto de Emilia is a book that has practices. There is a QR that if you take the picture, you go to a website which is open for everybody, because that is what I asked Penguin Random House to do, with practices in Spanish, guided by children of different ages, boys and girls, a grandmother, a father with a different rhythm, a different voice, a different kind of invitation, my voice also. And that book is really going really well. It has, I think, 5 editions, more or less. And then they asked me to write how do you say in English? The kitchen of El Secreto Emilia, the fundamental stuff, the contents, the tips. So I wrote the other book, which is called in Spanish Mindfulness in Health, Education, and Families. And that book is how we can understand mindfulness, why it helps mindfulness to change or to build our habits, our attitudes, our moments, while we can as parents. And it's, I don't know how to say it in English, the history of all of my failures. As a mother, as
a
a
very
mindful,
familiar idea.
and how we can go on. And I teach in that book a lot of practices in different domains, inside the car, in the elevator, cooking, for different ages, and I explain the characteristics of the different ages in the mind, the connection with the body, what they need. And also we have some chapters for doctors, pediatricians, nurses, some chapters for teachers, so they can take profit of all that information and the practices.
Yeah, that's a very important aspect to this, is you mentioned having different recommendations based on the age of the child, that teaching someone who's 4 might be very different than working with someone who's 12.
Exactly.
And I'm wondering if you could say just a little bit more for those who might be curious about working with kids. It might be a mindfulness teacher, but they've only worked with adults, and they're wondering what it's like to work with kids. Do you have anything you'd just like to recommend to them of some things they need to be aware of when they're working with kids?
Yeah, I have a lot of things. Please stop me. One is that it doesn't matter what you say, not at all, because children are like sponges. They absorb and they realize in half a second what mindfulness is. It's all about being there, your attitude, and the quality of your presence. If you are not lying down, don't invite a kid to practice a body scan. Not at all, because they are watching what you do, not what you say. Practices for kids I have to be really playful, short, focused, and the span of attention depends on the age. But if you have a 5-year-old kid, just play with something that you can pay attention, that has some relation to the life of that kid. Don't export something as with effort. Just be there, realize what that kid is interested in, and go with that. children are really fast, and they, up until 7 years old, they know how to be present. They are not alienated at all. I really think that they do, if we were more aware, they do not need to learn mindfulness at all, because they are learning and unfolding awareness, and they need our practice. They need our presence. The kids say to me, Marina, I already cultivated a quality of presence, but my mother is still shouting. She's not realizing she has to stop behaving like that. I don't hit my sister anymore, but my mom, she hasn't learned. So, or the teacher who shouts, be quiet, practice mindfulness. No, not at all. Not at all.
Well, and this
The
is such an
practice
important
starts at home.
aspect. Such an important aspect of what you're sharing is how important it is for those who are teaching to have their own personal practice. It's one of the reasons I keep pushing back on people in other professions who think mindfulness is a technique. Just give me a script and I'm good to go. No, you're not. This is something that you need to embody. And that can be a very challenging concept to absorb if you don't have a personal practice and know it for yourself.
Exactly. So the first, to sum this, what you have asked, if I have only one answer, is your practice will allow the kids to learn how to inhabit their experience.
Beautifully
You
said.
do the difference practicing.
Excellent. Well, for those who are interested in finding out more about Marina's work, I am going to have links where links are found in these places. Our guest today, Marina Lisenberg, thank you so much for being here, for the work that you're doing with kids. Really appreciate it and good to see you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much, Ted.
Bringing mindfulness to new groups can be very challenging and is a labor of love. So thanks to our guests for doing that, and especially our guest today. And for those of you who are watching, remember, every moment you have a choice. Just make it the best you can, and I'll see you next time on Mindfulness Voyage.